We're live, Chair.
Good afternoon, and thanks, Kath, for doing all the preparations for this meeting. But good afternoon, everybody. We're here on the 20th of November for the finance panel, looking at the Q2 outturns. But first, we've got to go through a number of apologies. Can I also, before I ask for apologies, can I welcome, I'm not sure which counts if my list is up to date now, of the cabinet members who are here. I understand Councillor Pete Roberts, Jackie Charlton, Richard Church and Sandra Davis are joining us this afternoon. And can we have apologies from those who aren't able to join us, Kath?
Yep, by all means. From Finance Panel Chair, we've got apologies from Councillor Arwell Jones, Councillor Jeremy Pugh, Councillor Kenyon Wade and Councillor Elwyn Vaughan. From Cabinet, I've received apologies from Councillor David Thomas, Jake Berriman, Matthew Dorrance, Glyn Preston, James Gibson-Watt and Rafe Devlin. Officers, I've got apologies from Jane Thomas, Clive Pinney, Richard Jones, Matt Perry, then senior and other officers, Anne Phillips, Daniel Burgess, Gwilym Davis, John Forsey, Andy Thompson, Paul Bradshaw, Graham Evans, Helen Dolman and Jackie Pugh.
Great, thanks, Kath.
And and the Observing Governance and Audit Chair, Lynn Hamilton.
Okay. No, it's good of Lynn to join us, and she tries to join us at most meetings, but she's not really obliged to come here. So thank you, Kath, for those names. Since Councillor David Thomas isn't here to lead on the papers, I'll be turning to Head of Finance to give us an overview of those papers. But first, can we go to item 2, declarations of interest? Members, any declarations to make? No. And then item 3 is the minutes of the 10th of October meeting, which was basically looking at Q1. Are we happy with those minutes as they are presented there? Can I have thank you, Councillor Pete.
I was just going to ask a quick question, Chair, if I may.
Go on, Councillor.
Sorry, yeah, sorry. I was just it's in page 7 on the pack, which related to some points that we previously raised by the panel and the responses from officers and cabinet members. And one of them under the heading of, sorry, just scrolling backwards and forwards, the capital programme in borrowing. It said officers agreed to provide benchmarking data. I just wondered how we keep a track on that to make sure we actually get to see that data.
Okay, we at the end of the minutes there were recommendations to Cabinet, and those are swept up there. I was going to, I think that is there, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Bear with me, yes.
So I was going to come to those in a moment, Pete.
Okay, no problem. Sorry.
So can we just take the minutes for accuracy at the moment? Are you happy to stick your hand up for that one as well?
Yes, happy to keep my hand up. Yeah.
Okay. And Chris as well. Everybody in favour? If I don't hear anything, brilliant. Thank you all. Yes. So down to page 11, 12. We do have those recommendations to Cabinet. Do you want to make your point now, Pete? About the...
Yeah, sorry, my phone's very slow over the keys, Chair, sorry. I'll just see the point in relation to what's down there now. Yeah, I think it was that number 2 there about the benchmarking information to be provided. It was more around a process point, I guess, Chair, which is how do we then keep track of that to make sure we see that benchmarking information.
Can I turn to Mary to
respond
to that, please?
We can make sure that we circulate that to Finance Panel as well as to Cabinet.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Thanks,
the benchmarking information.
Okay. did the cabinet have any comments on the service-specific FRMs and our ability to have an early view on those to help us with the scrutiny and budget planning? Were the cabinet willing to provide those?
I think as soon as they're available, yes, they're willing to share those. It's I mean, I can see Councillor Roberts has put his camera on as well. I'm just making sure that they're at an appropriate point in the process, really.
Okay, Councillor Roberts, did you want to comment on that?
Maria said exactly what I was going to say. As soon as we've got stuff ready, we will share it, because obviously this is going to be a very challenging budget, as they have all been of late. And we want to ensure that members can offer ideas and critique as early in the process as they can. Hence the budgetary advisory group process that was set up to give people a sight of emerging plans rather than finalised ones.
Yes, and that is a role of the finance panel as well, to have that early sight, and the panel are more than happy to have them in confidential sessions. I am part of the budget advisory group, but again, it's confidential, and we don't have the papers to take away, so it's difficult to add value to in some of these processes. But I hear what you're saying, Councillor Roberts. And number 4 in that list, that's an ongoing issue. I know Section 151 officer is very keen, and she is keeping a close eye on those. Is there any further comment you wish to make on that, Mary? Or
I think we can probably pick it up under the Q2 forecasts for capital as well.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Thank you all. Back to the main agenda. Oh, sorry, that was. Ooh.
Q2 revenue.
Yes, apologies. Yeah, sorry. Item 4. I've got back to the correct page now. So, Mary, could you give us a quick oversight on the Q2 revenue as of the 30th of September 2025?
Yes, of course.
Thank you, Mary.
So the report before you sets out the full year forecast position for the council based on the Q2 position at the end of September. We're currently forecasting a modest overall underspend of 0.8 million for the year. And when we withdraw non-ring fence budgets, that becomes a 1.2 million underspend. This is obviously a positive position, but particularly compared to the same period last year. But I think it is a modest underspend, and the margin is slim. So we need to continue with our rigor and discipline around budget monitoring and budget management to make sure that we can maintain that position, really. The underspend has reduced since Q1, but that's mainly due to increases in costs in schools and in the HRA, but that's been offset by savings in children's services, planning and regulatory services, and also in the highways, transport and recycling services. Section 3 of the report sets out the detail around the savings and cost reductions that were planned for 25-26, and there has been an improvement in the level of savings actually achieved, or those that are assured at the end of Q2, which is good to see. So achieving those agreed cost reductions is fundamental, really, to ensuring our financial resilience going forward. Just draw your attention to the environments then in section 5 as well. Just looking at those in detail, those form the biggest part of the recommendations for the report. We've got the first two relate to seeking approval for a transfer of funds into the vehicle replacement reserve to support future vehicle acquisitions. The first one's around a forecast underspend on depreciation charges for fleet management services, and the second one relates to income from the sales of plant and vehicles as well. There's a environment request, a relatively small environment request there for moving some of the overachievement in car park income to highways operations. And then the next two environments relate to some change in requirements around the extended producer responsibilities and the ability to fund more resource than was originally planned there. The remaining environments then all relate to use of the risk budget. As you're aware, we've got we start the year with a £3 million risk budget to cover items that are identified during the budget process, but we hold those at risk because there's some uncertainty really around the level and the timing of when those will actually hit, if they will actually hit. So we tend to hold those against that £3 million risk budget and allocate that during the year. So there's a number of items there drawing on that risk reserve as well. And just for information, really, as much as anything, the Section 151 officer has previously been approved to draw down the specific reserves that were set up at the end of last financial year, and Section 5.3 there just provides some detail around some of that drawdown. Section 6 relates to a debt write-off. So as you know, we've been working really hard to reduce our aged debt and liaising quite closely with some of our larger debtors. And we've come to a position and an agreement with the Hereford and Worcestershire Integrated Care Board around a range of invoices that have been raised to them. We're replacing £297,000 worth of invoices with £148,000 worth of invoices, and we're seeking approval really to write off the difference of £149,000, for which we can use the provision for bad debt that's already been established to cover the costs of that. Section 7 sets out our financial risks. We're still significant risk around delivering a balanced budget over the next 5 years. We've made a huge amount of work has gone into getting us to where we are in terms of next year's budget in the next 5 years, but that remains an ongoing challenge really for all of us to deal with. And then, as you'll see, the Section 151 officer notes the importance of maintaining that financial resilience through that robust financial management and trying to limit the use of reserves where we can and realigning service delivery to remain within the budgets allocated. And you'll see the recommendations then at the end regarding to note the current budget position, to approve the buy-ins and also to approve the debt write-off as set out in the report.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Marianne.
Yeah.
Sorry, Marianne. Thank you very much. A couple of quick questions. Partly, well, can I kick off really? I know this should be to Councillor Thomas really, but you pick up on it when you're talking towards the end about the financial risks, and the Section 151 officer talks about it in her narrative there in section 8. How robust are these, is a position at the moment, given that there's been significant changes between the first and second quarter? How robust and confident are you in getting the budget on target at the end of the financial year?
I think obviously things change throughout the year, and that's why we see some of those changes. I know in particular, one of the big changes that we saw between the end of quarter one and the end of quarter two is around those the assurance that we had around the savings position and savings being achieved, and that's made the biggest difference really in terms of the position. It does vary, but yeah, I'm content that it's as robust as it can be, given where we are. Really, we've got quite close working relationships. We've got some of the heads of service here as well, you know, between the finance team and heads of service, and that's, you know, that's fundamental to the robustness of the report, really.
Okay, and yeah, we'll pick up the individual service stuff as we go through this report. Just back to table 1, it's presented slightly differently compared to the previous quarter. For some reason, the base budget is a negative figure in this year, this one, and it's been, as in, is read within brackets, so that's a negative figure. And the other one, in the first quarter, it was a positive figure for some reason. There's, it would be really useful to have a consistent approach to between various quarters, that we can easily understand what's going on here. And then the forecasts, the pressures have gone down. Cost reductions have gone down. So the net position is more or less where it is at the end. You know, that slight change of from just over 2.2 down to 0.8, that 1.4 million pound change. But in there's a lot of changes, isn't there? Because there's a lot of money. You referred to it in section appendix C, is it? All those grants received. It doesn't give us a total of grants received within this quarter. Are they all received within this quarter 2, or were any of them known about before quarter 2?
I'd have to check the detail on that, Chair, and come back to you if that's okay. In terms, I can certainly get the total, but in terms of the actual timing of when we received the grant letters, I'd need to check that.
Because they appear to disappear into the services, and they almost blank out over expenditure within the services. So we can't really track what's happening to those grants within those services. I would have thought that those additional money would appear in that summary on table 1. Why doesn't it? Because I mean, to some extent, it's probably balancing off the pressures, is it? Or
yes, it would be. It would be within that forecast pressures or underspends figure there. That budgets are updated for grants that we receive, and the spend that goes against it as we move through the year. So yes, it would be included within that figure.
Okay, because those grants don't appear in Appendix A either, do they?
Not as a separate amount. No, they'd be within the most recent budget column. So the forecast, the CP forecast outturn column, they'd be included within that column.
Yes,
both the grant income and the expenditure then.
What is a total grant? It's over, it's £2-3 million, is it? Or I haven't really added them up myself. And it really should state the amount of grant in this section 1.5, sorry, 5.1. But it's only one sentence there, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll get that figure to you before the end of the meeting.
Okay. In future, could the sums be put there?
Yes, yeah, no problem.
And how do we go about identifying where services have not kept to their budgets and these grants have been used to sort of smooth out the net figure? It worries me that some parts of the budget aren't being properly managed and it's just been smoothed over by the receipt of these grants, because these grants weren't known about when the original budget was set back in February, March, was it? I don't think.
Some of them we would have known about in advance, but not necessarily the detailed amounts. Some of those come through during the financial year, and you know, as we get the grant offer letters coming through. But we can pick that up with the team. I can see.
Okay. So yeah, just to round this off before I come to Nina. These figures, if they were known about, should be appearing in the budget when set in February, March. Shouldn't they? If they were known about and expected, because it misrepresents the budget position back in February, March.
There'll be estimates in there, but as we get the grant offer letters through, sometimes we have updates to that need to be included within this report then.
Okay. Nina, can I just bring in quickly Councillor Pete and Chris, just in case they've got stuff you can cover off as well. Pete.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, a question really was in relation to both Table 1 and Table 2 with the revenue risk budget in the background. So I think, Mary, you talked about £3 million revenue risk budget, which, as we go through the papers, is down to 2 million now. So if I look at Table 1, it uses a phrase, cost reductions not yet delivered but assured. And I guess I just wanted to see if you had an opinion on how cast iron that assurance actually is, which then brings me down to Table 2, where we have a column not yet achieved or assured, and that's at 1.3 million. And again, I guess there, as we've only got like 2 million left in the risk budget, it's what's the contingency plans in place if we do not achieve those savings there?
So in terms of the assurance around the not achieved but assured column, that's as a result of quite close working, as I said, between the teams and heads of service to make sure that it reflects the most up-to-date position. Where services aren't sure about whether they can deliver them or not, that's where they end up in the not yet achieved or assured. And there's obviously still 6 months of the financial year for them to try and deliver those savings. We do challenge services to try and make sure that they can deliver the savings, either the ones that have been agreed or to agree temporary mitigation while they're putting their plans in place to achieve those savings as well.
So yeah, I guess, sorry, Chair, if I could. Yeah, thanks, Mary. I guess though, is there a contingency plan beyond, if they just can't achieve that 1.3 million, is there a contingency plan or what happens?
The expectation is that services will deliver on those savings or find alternatives to mitigate it, either in this year or to allow that time to deliver the savings that have been agreed. So that's what we work with them with. If that's not achieved as we've done in previous years, we will roll those savings on into future years. It's only on relatively rare occasions that they're written out during the budget process. If for whatever reason things come to light and we realise that they're not going to be achieved at all.
So without being rude, there isn't a contingency plan as such beyond perhaps rolling forwards.
That is the contingency plan, I suppose. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And then just to, you do internal environments within that area to balance it off.
Yes.
And that's potentially where the additional grant funding in year helps a bit, does it? Or go back to my original point.
It can do. Obviously, we have to work within the terms and conditions
Yeah.
of the grants as well. So we need to
Okay.
make sure that we meet those terms and conditions.
Okay. Chris, were you moving on, or I know Nina put her hand up when I was asking questions, or do you want to put your question first?
Sorry, Chair. No, it was. I was picking up on some of the similar points.
Oh yeah, go on.
Because I just wondered that sometimes can we learn from the past in relation to what we've done on there? Because what I don't want to get, and I think the other speakers have indicated, is that we get to the end of Q3 or coming into Q4, and then we have surprises, and that then means that some of the anticipated savings have to then roll over into the next financial year, which has happened previously, particularly, and I'm not wanting to pick on anyone in particular, but I can say around children's services that has happened in the past. They've made sterling efforts to try and do things on there, and again, it does mention that they've I think it was in point, what was it? There had been improvements related to the forecasting children's services of 0.7 million, which obviously is positive, but I don't want on there. But again, I picked up on this, not achieved, but assured. How are we assured? And I would like to have that assurance, particularly when I look at adult services and also children's services, because it's what 3.2 and 811 in that column, which is quite significant. So backing up on the same point that Councillor Peter just made on there, I thought it was an interesting conversation regarding grants. I was of the assumption that grants are given for a specific purpose. And one of those grants, for example, I think related to age-friendly community grant, which was around 50,000 if I go to on there. Now, usually a grant is given for a specific purpose, so I don't think it could then be used for any other purpose of cover or altering a position around that. And that funding is usually only released when that person then comes into post. So it's specific then around deliverables of outcomes and objectives of that post on there. And I'm looking then to some of the service heads and directors to give me that assurance that that is what is happening, because that's been my understanding. Now that's in relation to health side of it and health service. So I may be wrong on that, but I'm looking for that assurance on there. But are there any lessons from the past? Because previously we've achieved some of this, and I'd like to see whether we can get those assurances along with the quarterly monitoring that we're doing as a finance panel is an assurance in itself, and also the heads of department would be monitoring those things regularly, and plus other scrutiny committees would be taking an interest in this as well.
Yeah, shall I start, Chair, and then I
And then
think
Nina can come in afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, in terms of learning lessons from the past, we always try and do that. Obviously, where if there are things that we can pick up and improve on, we do try and implement those as we go along. Really, so yes, we have in the past rolled things forward. We have in the past written some savings out as well, but we try to keep that to a minimum wherever we can. Like you, I'm not keen on seeing those sort of having surprises towards the end of the financial year either. So we are keen to keep a really close eye on that, along with services as well, to provide that assurance around the ones that are not yet delivered but assured. And yes, in terms of grant terms and conditions, we have to work within the grant terms and conditions as well and make sure that we comply with those. So yeah, apologies if anything that I said earlier might have inferred anything different. That's not the case.
Thanks, Mary. And Nina.
Thank you, Chair. Conversation's moved on quite a bit, so I'll try and pick up on many points as I can. But Mary's covered off most of it as well. But in terms of assurance, Chair, I just wanted to assure you that we've got, governance process is in place to be making sure that we are regularly looking at our budgets and the cost efficiencies in particular, because I know that's something we're focusing on here. So within my service, for example, we have fortnightly senior leader meetings where we look at budgets and cost efficiencies. We have monthly meetings with portfolio holders. We have quarterly meetings, as obviously we're here, and goes to scrutiny as well. So we have those regular assurance and governance kind of processes to make sure that we're keeping on top of these. In terms of grants, we do get grants coming throughout the year. You will see additional grant coming in Q3 as well. I'm aware that we've had some in recent weeks into social services, etc. So that is normal practices that we do have additional letters, grant opportunities arising throughout the year. In terms of, as Mary said, we absolutely deliver on those grants in terms of the terms and conditions to deliver on a specific purposes. Sometimes they can free up money that we had allocated within our budgets, whether that be capital or revenue, for example, as well. In terms of cost reductions, I think, Chair, you asked about how and where you obviously have a key role as a committee to oversee that. And that table 2 is really important in the commentary that heads of services are providing. So that's setting out what's been achieved, what's achieved but not achieved but assured. So that's where plans are on track. The plans, the service that are put in place at the beginning of the year are on track to deliver. And then you've got that mitigation where the things are not on track with the initial plans, but the service have put in additional changes, mitigation to cover it instead. So that table 2 is really important kind of focus for all of us, isn't it, to make sure that we keep on track of that as well. Councillor Chris, you're absolutely right. It's important that we learn from the past. And you mentioned about rolled forward savings. And I just wanted to note and highlight the really positive work that's happened in children's services to deliver on those previous rolled forward savings. So I just want to note and thank the team led by Sharon, who's here today, if you want any more details. But that's really pleasing to see, and the improved position from children's services as well. So I just wanted to give you, Chair, just a brief kind of assurance on the work that happens within the service in terms of some of the discussion points raised so far this afternoon. Thank you.
And can I congratulate your directorate, Nina, as well. All the savings are assured in your area, and there's a sort of 0% in the second to last column in that table 2, where there's significant, as Councillor Peat said earlier, there's 1.2, but children and adults don't contribute at all to that 1.2 million. There's quite a bit of noise in the press and stuff about daytime activities within your area, or Sharon's, perhaps she can talk to it, but there's nothing on that in the commentary. Are those savings identified, well, pinned against the daytime activities? Will those be delivered as expected?
Thank you. Yes, they are included within. The work is ongoing throughout the current financial year, and they're ones that I think we'll be looking at Q3 as putting down as going to be mitigated. So we're on track, but fully delivered then from April next year as well.
So shouldn't that be shouldn't there be an element of that with in the columns where you've got 0%, or not 0%, but zeros in those columns of not achieved but or assured within this financial year?
Yeah, we've had additional work happening over the last couple of weeks, and Sharon's put her hand up and she can update on that work if that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Pete had his hand up. Who wants to come first, Sharon or Pete? Jump in, whichever. Go on, Pete.
I'll come in and Sharon can clarify. What we're looking at today is the end of Q2 position, so September of this year.
Yeah, but
So-
it is looking forward to position in the 31st of March, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but the position you're looking at there is what the service thought was the position at that point. As the director has just said, there's been significant work over the last 6 weeks that may result in a change in that position when we look at the Q3 position. But it's the usual situation we have when we're looking at financial reporting, that we have to report at a point in time, and at the point in time we're discussing, this is the actual position. I can't change a report on the position on the 30th of September because of actions that happened in October and November. That comes through in the reporting at Q3. What I can say is that the discussions I've had since then show that any changes that will happen will, as the director has said, mean that the savings move into the mitigated column rather than not delivered column. So in terms of the bottom line at the end of the financial year, there won't be an implication on the delivery programme. They will just be delivered in a different way in this financial year.
Yeah, I accept that around the actual numbers, but you know, there's a commentary section in Appendix B where a bit of more nuanced sort of commentary could be included, but anyway.
I don't think that's necessarily fair on officers, because how can, if we assume that this report was written on the 1st of October, how can officers make commentary in a report on things that didn't happen until later in that month? There always has to be a cut-off, and this reflects the cut-off. I can give you the additional assurance of what has happened since then, but we can't retrospectively change a report about Q2 activity for things that happened in Q3.
Okay, thanks. Sharon, did you want to add to Councillor Roberts' comments? No. Oh, you're muted, Sharon. Sorry.
Apologies, Chair. Only nothing, no more detail really, only to provide assurances that we do meet monthly to review our efficiency tracker, and I take on your point around adding more detail and nuance, and if there is any available data and detail to add to my commentary at point of reporting, I'll make sure that that's included.
Thank you much, Sharon. Thank you. And I know it's a hugely difficult area to control costs. A lot of the additional stuff, additional demand is at risk as well, isn't it? So thank you much, Nina and Sharon. Diane.
Thank you, Chair. I just thought I'd kind of look at the directorate as a whole, and not trying to say for any specifics, but trying to answer some of the questions across the board that you've asked this afternoon. So really, in terms of delivery against savings, obviously it's an ongoing and challenging picture with significant reductions over the years across all services. So all savings are challenging to deliver. And I think, you know, we do have this ongoing challenge every year. We do try and put forward sensible savings that can be delivered, but are still challenging and still take a lot of work to get there. And sometimes we need flexibility to be able to make sure we balance the budget. There are always in-year opportunities for income efficiency and grants within the year. That is just the nature of what happens year in, year out. We offset those problem savings with those opportunities wherever possible to manage those variants within the budgets. But we do need to have that flexibility for opportunity as well. So, for instance, I think you said about, did we know when we set the budget of about some of these grants? Well, the extended producer responsibility, we knew it was coming. We knew we were working with the industry behind the scenes. We didn't know the value until September. So that's why you get that in-year variance a lot of the time as well. So I just wanted to really set out kind of like a generic picture, but I'm happy to answer any specific questions that I can, or take them away.
No, thank you, Diane. We were going to touch on that later, but you've dealt with part of it now. But it was that transparency. It was my original point around grants received into the various services, and how you know what actions. How is that grant spent to some degree? And I know that's more to do with the individual scrutiny areas, but it's that transparency of how the money flows through the system as well, which I think could be captured in table 1. Well, a little bit more clarity could be achieved within table 1. Councillor Danny.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was going to move on to questioning about the unachieved savings in highways, transport and recycling. Would you like me to come forward with that?
Yes, please. Yep. It's just under £1 million, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. That's what really brought it to my attention. It's the largest figure on there. It's 958,000. Yeah, I was just really wondering what structural changes are being considered or carried out to avoid reliance on risk, or what is that completely unachievable? Is it an unrealistic figure, or is it just not things that just haven't happened yet? Really, just some clarity around it, really, please.
Who's Diane? Could you pick up that on that, please? Thank you.
Happy to answer that question. So you will see within the environments that are listed, there are 4 environments that actually, if approved, will then shift the achieved but not yet assured figure by 452,000. So bringing that figure down to just over 500,000. And then within those, we have plans to deliver all of those 500,000. To also deliver the 452,000 that this year we cover by environments, but obviously ongoing works will still have to take place to be able to make those in later years, which are then built into the FRM 5-year model. So I think some of them are listed in the in the environments, and I think, you know, we could do a better job of then listing those that are still yet to be assured and how we are going to deliver them to give you that better clarity for, and we'll make sure that's added for Q3. We've either made them or we've got a list of them and what we're doing.
Just looking through the environments now, there's a lot of figures. Which specific point is it to? Because there's 3 highways. 1 at the bottom of page, no, sorry, 2 at the bottom of page 16 and at the top of 17.
Yeah. Would you like me to go through them one by one?
Yes,
Would that help?
Yes, please, yeah.
Of course. Okay. So the Transport Fund Fleet Management Service, that's for 490,000. That doesn't give any support to the savings. That's just trying to put vehicle money into the vehicle replacement pot, which is always under strain to be able to afford vehicles for the future. The 250,000 of sales receipts again is put into contribution towards the replacement vehicles as well. Then we've got the 43,000, so the overachievement in car parking income. We do propose offsets the winter maintenance saving, which we're finding hard to deliver with at the moment in the timescale we had to deliver. So we thought we could get that through this year, but it's going to take a bit longer to work that through with trade unions. So does that make sense? So the 43,000 and then the 105,000, which is the permanent environment to reduce the waste and recycling budget. So what we're trying to do is keep those staff in place to deliver some of the requirements of the extended producer responsibility, so using that budget quite legitimately across to there. And then we've got 240,000, which is environment, again for the waste and recycling staff budget, linked to restructuring, which we're using to, again, deliver on some of the new requirements of the extended producer responsibility grant. And then the 100,000 is the last one, which is the a temporary in-year environment to offset that staffing saving, which whilst we go through the planning permission for the bulking facility, and we weren't sure whether we needed planning permission to implement this, but it turns out that we do, and that planning permission has gone in, but we know it won't be delivered in this year, so we're asking for that temporary environment there. Does that help? So those four, the 43, 105, the 204 and the 100, then offset the unachieved saving by 452,000.
Okay. Can I come back, Chair? Is
Yes,
that okay?
please.
Yeah.
It's the last three we're sort of more interested in, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Specifically for me, especially the last one, 5.2.6. That 100,000 in there. What happens if you don't get planning?
Well, then it would have to request the funding from the risk budget, and that's what the risk budget kind of is there to support, is where we can't achieve savings that we set out to achieve. And there are various reasons that do come up in terms of trying to deliver some of these savings. They are really, you know, any easy savings have gone years ago. These are really hard. They're really technical, some of them, and they do require, you know, external factors to play positively in our favour. So we don't know the outcome of that, unfortunately, until we go through that planning process. So the planning has been submitted. We hopefully will get a positive outcome, and we hopefully will be able to deliver, but we do know it's not going to happen this year, so we're asking for that environment to cover.
Okay, so at the time when that was introduced as a saving, you weren't aware that you needed planning for it. I'm guessing. Is that what we're saying, or have I misunderstood?
We felt that the planning we had in place covered us. I think Councillor Jackie wants to answer a bit more in detail on this one, so I'll hand over.
I can see Councillor.
Yeah.
Please, Jackie.
Are you okay with me, Chair, to come in and,
yes,
give
please,
a bit of
Jackie,
response
yes.
just on this particular issue? Councillor Denny, this has been going on for several years. When we first set this up, there was an anticipation that we wouldn't need planning permission because it had been in the original planning to look at the changes in the bulking facility at Abermule. That changed. This has been going on for the last 2 years. There's been a lot of delays in this, not through anything of our fault, but there have been certain assessments that have had to have been done. They have to be done at certain times of the year. We've also done a lot of community engagement. This has been in the press. We've engaged with the community council. We've engaged with the community of Abermule as well. So we had to wait for all that information to come through. It's on its way. I think it's probably almost at the next planning. I mean, it is really close to coming for a planning decision. Everything's been done now, but because it was a 50,000 savings each year and it's gone on for 2 years, that's 100,000 that we haven't been able to achieve. Being vired like this through the EPR, which is the extended producer's responsibility, that only came on stream this November. So we've never been able to use that before to help us out with some of the unachievable savings, specifically around recycling. we're using that, the extended producer's responsibility, as something that we can use as a local authority to improve our waste and recycling facilities. So those three environments, we're using the extended producer's responsibility to enable us to do what we wanted to do, which we haven't been able to achieve up to now. So it's actually a good news story, and it's very positive. But the bulking facility, we just have to wait. The planning committee will make their own decision on that one with the information that they're presented with. So I hope that helps a little bit. And I know it's difficult for Diane. I'm a lot closer to this particular issue than Diane has been. So I'm hoping that that's helped the discussion further.
Thank you, Councillor Charlton. Danny, did you want to come back on that? Because you did mention planning, and there's quite a lot of local resistance to that, because when the building was initially, just shows my age a little bit, when the building was initially put up, there was assurances that no black bags would be collected at that site. In theory, it's inert material, apart from certain elements within it, such as dog waste and nappies, etc. But it's that we are concerned about, whether the the council needs to be honest right from the beginning when it's delivering a new service, and the local community are up in arms about it. But that's slightly outside of the brief of this committee, really, isn't it? So obviously there's concerns about the deliverability of that savings. So thank you, Jackie. Did you want to add to that at all?
I just wanted to say exactly what you've just said. Actually, Councillor Aled, this is outside the remit of the finance panel. It will be a decision that the planning committee will take on the basis of the evidence that they receive at that planning committee. And we've moved a long way forward to where we were 2 years ago. So it isn't within the remit of this panel to discuss that.
No, but we've got to be aware of risks around all elements within the budget, and the deliverability of a balanced budget at the end of the financial year. So thank you, Councillor Charlton. Danny, were you happy with that, or did you want to touch on the other elements within that? Can I just quickly ask, the extended EPR, the extended producer responsibility, what is the potential income from that annually? Do we know that?
Would you like me to come back in, Chair?
Yes.
Yeah. It's just over 4 million this year. It has to be spent on household recycling and other waste, and we think we are going to be spending that amount on the different things that are coming through. We've got a very strong sustainable resource strategy, which has been out to consultation with the public and come back. That resource strategy is available for anybody to read, and that is what we were using for the basis of using up the extended producer's responsibility. It will be an annual income, but we won't know from year to year what that income will be. It comes directly from Westminster. It's a tax on producers, and that tax is then provided for all local authorities across the UK to specifically use in the area of reducing packaging and helping councils to pay for the recycling that comes through from commercial areas, from producers and from supermarkets. So packaging from all over the place. They start the packaging off. We finish it by putting it through a recycling system or through other systems, and that money is there to help us to be the final arbiter, if you like, of what is waste and recycling. So it's a fee that comes through to us from central government, and we don't know from 1 year to the next what that fee will be.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jackie. Just while we've got you on screen, in the Appendix B, it does talk about 2 posts within the service, 121k being spent on 2 unfunded posts. How can we have 2 unfunded posts within the authority? Shouldn't they have been part of the budget?
I would need to bring an officer in to support me on that one, because I'm not quite sure where I haven't got it up in front of me. And you just said posts, I don't know what posts they are.
Yeah, sorry, Appendix B under economic development and growth, highways and transport recycling, straight after the school delegation. Can anybody help? Diane, you've got your hand up.
Apologies, Chair. I put my hand up to answer Danny Bebb's Danny Bebb's question on
well, do you want to deal with that
first? Proportion of savings undelivered, but I just wanted to point out they also have the highest proportion of savings to deliver. So proportionately, they've got about the same. They've delivered 72%, either delivered or assured. So which is roughly the same as most others. But the unfunded posts may be, I don't know specifically for these two, but what does happen in terms of posts is where you keep a post on where you expect grant funding to continue and it doesn't, which happens. We get positives and negatives with grant funding. We get some coming in the year where you don't expect it, you don't know the value, and you get some go out where you maybe felt that it was going to continue. So sometimes we have that kind of slippage to pick up on posts, and then it's a question of, are those posts required and do we need them, and do we still need to deliver the work that the grant was delivering, or do we stop the work? And they're all in-year choices at the same time, so which would be made hand in hand with the director and portfolio holder. So it's hard to kind of pick up on which ones they mean. So we'll get more information for you for the next meeting.
No, that'd be great, Diane. I know you're not the head of service and not that's so close to the detail on that. But can you also pick up the overspend on ALN transport as well? Year after year, we see that overspend on ALN transport. I don't know whether the bill is constantly going up or how it's budgeted for, but every year we have pressure being put on the budget because of ALN transport. One quick also comment, you did mention the savings you have to deliver as a service. There's quite a big proportion of that was carried over from previous years as well, wasn't there? I assume it's impossible to read from these figures that the previous year's carryover has been delivered and it's not at risk of being carried over for subsequent years. But you can come back to us with the detail on that, unless, Jackie, you want to.
Well, no, I was going to say the environments actually cover a lot of those rolled over savings, and it was important this year that we didn't roll over those savings again. So those environments will cover that. So that's in the recommendation. As far as the ALN is
they're not all permanent environments, are they?
Sorry?
They're not all permanent environments, are they, or not? It's just
no, but some of the environments are rollover savings. Some of them, the winter maintenance one is a rolled over savings that we haven't been able to achieve, and some of the household recycling Abermule issue and the route optimization as well on that is a rolled over savings. So they are definitely being taken out this time. We're coming back to the ALN. It is an area which I am picking up at the moment because, like you, I am very concerned. We often get, and we don't know at the beginning of the year, that we get new children coming in needing special transport, very specialist transport, which does cost a lot of money. And some of that transport may cost in the region 10, 20, 30,000 a year. That has a massive impact on our budget, and we only have 2 or 3 children like that, and you can see how that increases our budget, and we get an overspend. We are working together now with the education department as well to make sure that we get a better idea about how many children. These are children we're bringing in as well, bringing back into county for specialist education and bringing back into mainstream education from elsewhere. Those come in with an unexpected cost that we're not aware of. So we're working now with education to make sure that we get a better idea of what that might look like in the years to come, so that we can start budgeting for those specific needs. But it is a big pressure on us, and we are aware of it.
Thank you, Jackie. It is a little bit of a recurring theme year on year sometimes. If you finished with that section, Danny, I'll go to Gareth, and then I'll Gareth Hall. Gareth.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I'm picking up on the theme of Councillor Chris about lessons learned. I was wondering what analysis is done at the end of the financial year to compare what was actually spent with what was put in the business plan at the beginning of the year, which was the basis for the budget allocation. And can some lessons be learned from the major variances as the explanations for them? Some of them, for example, at one extreme, it could be bad forecasting. At the other end, it could be examples that Nina cited about getting their heads around the more efficient ways of working. So it'd be interesting to get the sort of top 10 headlines that explains the variance and things in between, like money rolling over or grants which weren't anticipated and are a bonus. So my thinking around this is that those lessons learned can be applied to the business planning process for the next year. So we've got more rigor in that process. So there's less inclination to be on the back foot if that thinking had been done at the earliest stage of the business planning process. And I think this view is compounded by the fact that the 151 officer tells us we're now going into a 5-year rolling programme for business planning in an attempt under Sustainable Powers to address these major pressures over the 5-year medium term. Is this done, or could we ask for it to be done?
I'll hand over to Mary on this, really. We've always had the sort of 5-year FRM, but I think more concentration has been put into that longer view. Mary?
Yeah, so yes, Gareth, you're absolutely right. We do pick up on those bigger variances, those big changes as we go through the year, and those are reflected then in the following years when we're preparing the budget for the following year. And we do try and pick up on a lot of the, as many of the lessons that we can, really, in terms of that process. And year on year, I'd like to think that our processes, are continually improving in terms of that sort of being the forecast being more robust as well as the process itself being more robust. In terms of the 5-year planning, what I think that we've always had a 5-year FRM, but I think it's fair to say that in previous years, the focus has really fallen on the next financial year, and the robustness of the information in the following 4 years probably could be improved. What we've done in this for the next budget round is given heads of service that challenge, and it has been challenging, of working through if they've got the same level of funding in 5 years' time as they have now, what do they need to do in the intervening 5 years to be able to deliver the services that they need to be able to deliver, or change those services in order to fit within that overall resource. And certainly what I've seen from that, and there's been a lot of work that's gone into that, is that it's changed the conversation that we're having about what we're trying to achieve. And it means that we're able then, over that 5 years, I think Section 151 officer has said it herself, there's some smoothing. If we need to have some smoothing over that 5 years in order to get to that balanced position in the 5th year, then we can plan that in now on this basis. And then this will be a rolling programme now from now on, really, with the same work each year, really. But we've done, I think we've done the hard part of it, the hard graft, if you like, in ready for next year, really, in terms of that overall 5-year planning. It's really brought a lot more onto the table, and there's more confidence around some of those figures within the FRM, with all the caveats that there are about, you know, how
Sure.
things change over that period as well.
Chair,
Gareth, if you want to come back on that,
if I
please.
could, yeah, thanks, Mary. That's really good to hear. I would like some assurances, maybe if you could give us the top half dozen headlines of those lessons learned that you've applied, so that we can then test this time next year whether or not it's actually bearing fruit. And I think the second point, Chair, is we are obsessed with budgets and balancing the books and spend, but spend is only a means to an end of the outputs and outcomes we're looking to deliver. And I don't see in any of this, the information that comes to us, is that the council has been much more efficient. It's getting better value for money, but we always need that test of effectiveness. Is the money doing the right things, and are we measuring them? And are we meeting those forecasts in the business plan of achieving those outputs that contribute to the corporate plan outcomes?
Thank you, Gareth. Probably everybody here probably agrees with the sentiments there. Nina, did you want to come in on this point?
Yeah,
as
very
one of the senior
briefly,
directors?
Chair, if I wouldn't mind. Gareth, you're absolutely right. It's really important, both as officers and as councillors and yourselves, to make sure that we are delivering the right outcomes and outputs, etc. But just this is the revenue report we're looking at the moment, and it does just focus on the finances. But that performance element comes through other reporting that we do quarterly, and they come through separate reports as well. So, but wouldn't necessarily come to the finance panel. So I just wanted to give you assurance that that does happen, and that does have appropriate scrutiny elsewhere. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Nina. And can I just follow up Gareth's point a little bit? In section B of the section 151 officer, she does talk about that's a more robust 5-year revenue budget. And typically over the last few years, we've always seen that £10 million every year going forward, giving us cumulative figure, a frightening cumulative figure. Can you give us some assurance about whether that's won't be so stark in this next year's budget, now that you've more of a focus on that 5-year plan?
Sorry, I'm just trying to find the figure that you were quoting there. Sorry, Chair. Can you?
Yeah, no, it's just a typical figure about all FRMs. Like an old one here. The future years, there's always a gap, isn't there?
Yes, yes.
And will that gap be significantly smaller, or how will it be treated in this budget round?
Yes, the gap is small, certainly smaller than it was in the papers that went, at budget setting time back in February. There's been some significant progress really in terms of that. We're still waiting some clarity. I think there's some quite key announcements happening next week that will help firm that up, but we're looking at a much smaller gap, but there's still work to be done. We're not at a balanced budget position as yet.
I really do appreciate the work of the finance team and all the directors. When you don't know what is the exact budget you're going to be working towards. So, and we've got the budget next week. Goodness knows which direction the Chancellor will be going in next Thursday. Or maybe James Chappell, maybe you have the answer. Your hand is up. Sorry, James. James, you're on mute.
Sorry, my internet dropped out at the same time. I don't know if you can still hear me.
We're struggling to hear you, James. Or shall I? Can you come back to us? Are you still there, James?
Yeah, I don't know. Can you hear me now? My internet's just dropped out a couple of seconds.
Okay, yeah, can hear you now.
Sorry, the point I was going to add to Mary's about the budget was just that there's this always uncertainty around the level of funding from Welsh Government, which drives a massive part of the budget gap. And, you know, we don't, as you're well aware, the provisional settlements is due next week. That is really late in the process to you know, but we make assumptions, but unless we really know where that's going, that does drive a huge amount of the funding gap.
Yeah, no, and thank you. It's really, really difficult, and it's very short, few weeks before the council has to sign off the budget and do all the other prep work as well. Councillor Pete, I know you want to talk about the write-offs within section 6. Do you want to come in on that now?
I can do.
Oh, sorry, sorry, wrong Pete. Go on, Councillor Roberts. You
Sorry, I think we both asking the same thing. No, what I was coming in there was in answer to your question about the budget gaps. The core budget gap will still be there, but what we're seeing with the 5-year FRMs now is officers looking in much more detail about how they will profile their spend and profile their efficiencies over that time. So we'll see a smaller bottom line figure, because there will be a bit like the school budgeting process where you're looking 3 years out in a fair amount of detail. This will have much more detail in years 2, 3, 4 and 5 of the budget. So it won't be that the gap we've got to close is any smaller.
Councillor Roberts is frozen for me. I don't know if he's frozen for everybody else.
Yes, Chair.
Okay. I understand where he's coming from on that. So thank you, Councillor Roberts. Councillor Pete Lungton.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, too many.
Pick up on section 6, was it? I think.
Yeah, just a couple of points, if I may, to finish off. I guess is I think first of all, trying. Oh, he's still going.
Sorry, Pete. Councillor Roberts, we'd moved on because we'd lost you, but I think we got the gist of what you were saying about the future years. Thank you, Councillor Lewington.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I was just going to say, first of all, I would just add my thanks to those of yours, to all the officers and their teams for doing such a great job around this, as it sometimes appears to be very confusing to me. Is it such a moving feast? And also sometimes it does feel a little bit like the Okie Kokie, where some figures go in here and some figures come out there. Couple of points that just seeking a bit of clarity on, I guess, is it may be the wording around those column headings in table 2. But what I'm just struggling with is, if 2 quarters ago we agreed to achieve some savings, and now just 6 months later, not only have we not achieved them, which I can understand, but they're no longer assured. It's just what goes wrong in those 6 months for those agreed savings to now be at risk, if that makes sense. That was one point. The other one was around the varmint from car parking in section 5.2.3, where I think we're looking to utilise £43,000 of the overachievement on car parking income. And I just wonder, sometimes we focused an awful lot on the bad news throughout these reports, and I wondered if it could be good to see a balanced view, to see the good news. So, for example, could I ask the portfolio holder how much we have actually overachieved on car parking and how much we're projected to overachieve? And then finally, Chair, if I may, is just on the risk budget. That's one of the ones that, for me, I'd like to rename the Hokey Cokey budget. And I just wonder 2 things: is could we perhaps have a schedule where we start with the 3 million and then we're at least getting a little summary of what's going in and what's coming out of it? Because I guess I don't know what happens once we've utilised all that 3 million. And 3 million doesn't seem to be a lot of money for me in the context of our overall budget. So how, with only 2 million left now, is how will the remaining risk funding requests be prioritised. Thanks, Chair.
Who wants to kick off on that? There was a question to you there, Councillor Charlton, and perhaps Mary can pick up on the other bits afterwards.
Is that just the car parking, Chair?
Yes, I was thinking, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Councillor Lewington, I can't give you the figure today. I don't have it in front of me, but we can certainly get that back and feed that back to you. I think we're finding this is a moving beast each month. We've had a lot more people using our car parks recently since we've had the app in place, the phone app in place. That has been far more successful than we ever bargained for. And I think our target was in the hundreds, and the target rate or the amount of people using it is in the thousands. So that has actually made some considerable difference to the revenue that we're coming in, but I'm sure we can get that figure back to you at some point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Charlton. It'd be good to see how much the app is actually, what percentage of the takings the app is taking in now. So because I know there's quite a bit of complaints about the machines there sometimes.
Yeah,
not very functional.
It's in the performance quarterly report.
Okay.
And I think from memory, it's been used 8,000 times and it was only expected to be used a couple of hundred. So, I mean, that's how incredibly useful it's become to people.
Yeah, no, I was wondering what proportions. But we can look at the performance report. Mary, did you want to pick up on the other bits of Councillor?
Yes, happy to. I think in terms of the not yet achieved or assured column, I think we've had quite a lot of feedback really on the biggest area there, which was around the HTR one. So, but we can certainly try and bring some of those, a summary of some of the reasons why these things happen within 6 months of budget setting. Absolutely. In terms of the risk budget, I think it probably, I think it would be useful to have that summary of what's been used from it in each report, and we can include that. So more than happy to include that in future. The 3 million figure that we use has served us really well over the last few years. The amount that we hold against that risk budget at budget setting time is usually far higher, but there are uncertain, those are the particularly uncertain elements that we're forecasting at budget setting time, which is why they're allocated against the risk budget, and then that is only drawn down then as and when they actually sort of show themselves really in terms of our forecasting. So we do have to prioritize the final decisions on how the risk budget is used. Is usually something that's wrapped up during the year-end process as well. We bring them through as required during the year and ask for those environments during the year, but and we've not yet been in a position where the risk budget has been oversubscribed during the financial year. So but we do have other ways of dealing with that should we need to. I think last year when we were forecasting a significant overspend in terms of social services, we were looking at the use of specific reserves in some cases as well to make sure that budget came back into balance. So those considerations would happen as things came through really. So I think it serves us well to have an element of a risk budget there. It is, as with any budget during the FRM process that we go through, it's challenged alongside all the others really, but because of how useful it is to have it there and manage those more uncertain elements of potential pressures, it's certainly helped us deliver that balanced budget over the last few years, definitely.
Okay, Thank you, Mary. Chris, Councillor Chris.
Yeah, I've got two other areas of questioning related to the council tax. I don't know if they need to be answered here or whether you want them to go into the council tax base report, which is later, sir.
Well, I think the office is present now. Does it refer to it? Go for it, Chris.
It's on page 14 of the report.
Yeah, I was trying to.
So there are 2 points of interest for me in the sense of, I think it's under paragraph 2.4. The second bullet point in refers to, there's continuous demands, benefit support stretching both the housing benefit and the council tax reduction team by 0.6 of a million. So what action is going on there? Is that a serious risk to the authority moving forward? And then the fourth paragraph then gives them projections for council tax collection, the premium, where there are some self-catering units which have transferred from business rates to council tax, but there's an appeal going on, and they may come back and go back into business rates. So how likely is that to happen? Do we have any viewpoint on that? And again, what's the impact? Because again, there seems to be a significant amount of money that could be tied here. And I mentioned before about having no surprises. It's what actions are we doing behind the scenes that we don't necessarily see that give us the assurances at the end of Q4 when we're tidying this budget up and then move into the next, so that we've not been surprised on that, not in a bad way. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. Mary or Andrew, who wants to pick this one up? Mary?
Shall I start, and then Andrew will certainly have more, is closer to the detail on it, definitely, in terms of this. So in terms of the council tax premiums, as it's set out there, what we've seen is there was a change in the criteria that self-catering accommodation and self-catering units had to achieve in order to be considered for business rates. The Valuation Office agency have been working through their workload of self-catering units and moving some into council tax. And for those that are moved into council tax, that's backdated then to the 1st of April 2023, when those changes in criteria came into being. Now, a lot of the self-catering units and the owners, when they're presented with a council tax bill, especially a council tax bill with a premium attached to it, they will certainly write to us, let us know that they're appealing that with the VOA, but that can take some time. So in the meantime, if they're on the list, we're obliged to raise the bills and issue those bills for the council tax. And our advice to those owners is always to start to make payments, because they never know which way the appeal is going to go. But in terms of us and our level of income and the level of assurity that we're putting around that, we're taking a really cautious and prudent approach to that, because we're aware of the potential for the appeals and for some of those self-catering units to move back into business rates. Then we're being really prudent in terms of how much we actually bring into the forecast that you see before you for Q2. The other side of that as well is that Welsh Government are consulting on some tweaks to some of that. So they've asked for views around potentially giving 12 months grace and that kind of thing to businesses that move into council tax. So it's an area where there's a lot of things that could change. So we're being really prudent in terms of that. But Andrew, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, not a lot to add really, apart from perhaps a few number crunching. We saw around 250 properties that have moved from business rate into council tax over the past 12 months. Decision of the Valuation Office Agency, because the self-catering units have failed to meet the new criteria, which is much higher than the previous criteria. We are seeing small numbers slowly having a successful appeal and going back into business rates, but we only are talking, you know, a handful of the 250 properties. So as Mary said, we've been very cautious when we set the tax base as to how many second homes would be paying a premium because of the self-catering criteria. The VOA are advising customers appeals will take 9 to 12 months. So, you know, that's very much out of our hands. So in the interim, you know, whilst it's on the council tax list, we're obliged to bill and collect. But again, as Mary said, you know, a lot of them have been backdated to the 1st of April 2023. So we're seeing very large council tax bills going out. 8 to 12,000 is the average. And so a lot of challenge for the team in collecting that. And we're having to be quite flexible in the repayment plan. You know, it's got to be realistic to get the money in. But a lot of that extra revenue, should we say, is not going to be collected in financial year, and it'll roll on, and it may change as if that business does flip back into business rates. So yeah, it's a bit of a challenge at the moment around self-catering.
No, thank you, Andrew. It's a huge challenge for the council, but it's also a huge challenge to those business owners as well. Their business plans are being shot to pieces by that legislation. And just as a point of interest, when they shift back to council tax, do you collect their rubbish as a household recycling, or do they have to continue with again commercial disposal of their rubbish and recycle it?
Again, for you know, council tax legislation, you know, is driven by the number of days let. I wouldn't be in a position to comment around the waste collection, whether it be commercial or domestic. So
yeah, okay. It was just a thought that came to me now. I was just wondering whether you're getting claims for from people who are stuck in the council tax and have paid for commercial collectors to collect their rubbish. But thanks, Andrew. I know you'll come back to us with the council tax base report later, so you've covered off some points already. Councillor Peat, I got just one question on this section. Are you staying on this section for now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Go on.
That's okay. Yeah, no, thanks, Joe. No, it was just a quick one around that 1.3 million in there that I think I just wanted some clarity. So it says the provision's been set aside if the appeal is successful. Is the 1.3 million the entire amount that's at risk, or is that a percentage of the appeals? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the additional revenue is between 2 and 2.4 million, and so the surplus set aside is just under 50%. So there's a potential for a significant volume to flip back into business rates, and we have that provision to meet that switch. And we're also seeing an increase in number of applications for the discretionary council tax discount. So even if they don't flip, there's that additional financial burden on the Section 13A fund.
Okay. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Andrew. Quick question on bullet point 2. The housing benefits, last sentence of that, housing benefit supports our homeless activity, but is not sufficient to meet the cost due to the type of support that is being provided. Are we given above and beyond in the support that the council is providing or not? The way it reads there, it sounds as though we're doing more than other local authorities, possibly. I can't think there's anybody here that could answer the detail.
No.
We'll take it away. Sorry, Mary. We can take that.
I was just going to say I'm not in a position to give you the detail on that, but we can take that away and come back to.
Yeah. Okay, it's just the way it was written, maybe. Diolch yn fawr. I wanted to go back to school delegated very quickly. We've spent a huge amount, an hour and a half on this paper, and we've got a couple of other papers to go. The schools delegated, the overspend has increased. Trying to find the figures, is almost 400k, I think, between end of Q1 and Q2. All the budgets should have been in and approved before the end of Q1. What's changed during Q2? That's additional spend is expected to take place under school delegated, and is that likely to increase further before the end of the financial year? I can see Marianne's put a camera on. Pnawn da, Marianne.
Yeah, pnawn da. Yeah, so recovery plans are due in by the 30th of September. So these have come in, and the team are now reviewing the budgets during the autumn term. So
sorry, Mary. So what did you say was due before the 30th of September?
Recovery plans were due in.
Oh, recovery. Okay.
So there's a lot of work going on at the moment, looking at the recovery plans, working with the schools, finance, HR, SIAs, all working together, team around the school. And we'll be monitoring these and continuing to work with schools on an individual basis over the next year. So by the time we get to Q3, we'll be in a position to clarify further where we are with the delegated budget.
Okay, diolch yn fawr. So the budget presented by the 31st of May, I think, from these relevant schools wasn't realistic. Unachievable, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we'll have further recovery plans in September. Okay. Since then.
Okay. Did all schools present budgets?
Yes.
By the due date?
We have them all in now.
But some weren't licensed, I guess, because they were.
Yes, and we're using, we're using our statutory powers where we can to manage the school budgets. And I think we've got 7 schools currently on warning notices and 2 with notices of concern, and we're working closely with those, and budget recovery plans are in place.
Diolch yn fawr. Going on to Estyn, 300k has been drawn from the risk budget to deal with the improvement plans. Is this a one-off, or is this going to be something that's ongoing into the next financial years?
This is definitely a one-off because this funding is specified for those schools currently in Estyn categories, and the intention is that they come out of categories, that this funding supports them to come out of those, and they stay out. So this is all part of the improvement journey of the Education Service now, with a new head of school improvement and learning in place, and a strong secondary school improvement team in as well. So, we're on the right trajectory with our school improvement. So we won't be wanting this funding again next year.
That's brilliant news. There'll be no more schools going into category in the future. Thank you, Mary. And just a quick one on. Oh, sorry, no, that's not for you, Mary. So, diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you for that. Any other questions on schools at all? I know the previous portfolio holder has got his hand up.
No, it's not on schools. I thought you were moving on. I was going to come in 6.1.
Okay. Yes, I hadn't got back to 6.1 on the write-off debt. It's just that the debt with the health board across the board, half of it's been written off. It's more of a question about what other debts are out there which are at risk. I know you publish the levels of debt the council carries. I think it's in the Treasury Management Finance report, isn't it? But is there significant risk around the debts from other sources or third-party organisations? Thank you.
I'll let officers come in on the specifics there, but there's a more general point I think needs to be made on this one. This relates to continuing healthcare in the broadest sense, and we've seen reports come the other way where we've been successful at tribunal and had quite large sums, notably from Powys Teaching Health Board, coming into the system. What we are seeing, though, in the wider system, and this is not such a debt issue, but a long-term financial stability risk, is that the funding around the nursing care element, we're seeing increasingly care homes coming back and saying that their costs are in excess of that element, and they're pushing for additional funding. That's creating a position that officers are then in a position where health boards are not meeting the figures being asked by the care homes, and we're either left in a position where we can't place someone, which then has knock-on effects, because this quite often happens with people looking to be discharged from hospital, or there is an additional burden on the council. This has been a concern we've had for quite a while, and as a result, over the last 6 months, perhaps slightly more, we've been replicating the process that high schools went through in terms of looking at detailed funding reviews and expenditure reviews with a couple of our home providers to actually get better understandings about the costs. Those reports are going to almost certainly going to be confidential, but when we've had them in more fully, we will be looking to lobby with colleagues elsewhere in other councils to get a more realistic picture and more realistic funding for the nursing element. And we're also, as you'll be aware, within the Powys Home Care Home process in the longer term, we're looking at a process whereby replacements of our existing homes will be constructed in such a way that we can shift from residential to nursing care beds as part of a wider position. So it's a bit of a picture to say this is something we are concerned about and something for finance panel and potentially audit to keep an eye on in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. Nina.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I just wanted to add a couple of comments after the portfolio holder, Councillor Pete, just to, we're really as a service making sure that we're robust in this area, and I hope that gives you assurance, because it's really appropriate that we challenge where necessary to ensure that the correct funding is allocated. And obviously we won't go into any details as to that, but it's really important to make sure that correct allocation of funding is apportioned across local authorities and health boards, and to give you assurance that the service is really robustly challenging on appropriate occasions. On this occasion, it has meant that we've had to make a change to invoices that had been set up. But I just wanted to give you assurance, because it's really important, both for individuals, both for us as a local authority, that level of challenge and rigour is being put in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Just a couple of quick questions on that, really. How old was this particular debt, or this dispute has been going on for? And what is total debt roughly within your area?
I don't have that in front of me, Chair, but we do include information within the debt reports that come forward, etc., isn't it? I think that detail would be in there, but I will double check that with finance colleagues.
Okay, I'll try and, okay, thanks, Nina. We thank you, everybody. We spent a huge amount of time on this Q2 revenue reports. Any questions members have that haven't been covered, that they wish? Final chance now before we move on to Q2 for the capital. No? Great. So next item on the agenda is Q2 for the capital report. Back to you, Mary. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch. So again, the report before you provides the position, the forecast for the full year based on the position at the end of September again. And I'm going to hand straight over to James actually to run through the detail of the report. Thank you.
Of course. Welcome, James. Thank you.
Yeah, this report sets out the capital position at the end of September, end of quarter 2. As you can see from the table here in table 1, the budget has increased from the original budget of 86 million to currently, or at the end of quarter 2, just under 114 million through year-end roll forwards and new awards of grants during the year. Spend is just under 20 million, so that's 17% of the total budget, which is kind of what we expect at this point in year. We tend to see more spend towards the end of the year. Again, 38% or just over 44 million is due to be funded from borrowing, and that cost is charged to the revenue account. Obviously, as we go through the year, we'll look to minimise that borrowing and use as much external resources as possible. But it may end up that we reprofile some of that borrowing, so it may not be hitting this year, but the likelihood is it will hit at some point in time. Table 2 sets out the funding. The section 3 sets out the grants that have been received in quarter 2. So since the quarter 1 report, you can see there's quite a selection there, all listed. Section 4, there's been some reprofiling of the Sennybridge, Calendar there, Winbro, Hethgen and Golwg Pen y Fan capital schemes in the schools transformation, or not 21st schools, Sustainable Communities for Learning programme by Welsh Government. So you can see the amounts there that have been reallocated into future years to match the current spend or current spend profile. Section 5 sets out the capital receipts. As you can see, just under 800,000 has been received to date. There are further sales agreed, but it's not expected that we'll get much more than 2.7 million by the end of the year. Obviously, that relies on there being active buyers in the markets, properties being able to be sold, and the moratorium on county farm sales, of course, is in place. So that is not allowing us to sell some of the surplus assets we've got. Section 6 is the Section 151 officer comments, and then you'll see in Appendix A the commentary from each of the head of service setting out any commentary they've got on their plans for this year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, you've heard the report summarised by James. Members, do you have questions on this? Chris.
Yeah. Trying to get my camera.
Sorry, Chris, we can't.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my
hear
camera
you.
to work. Sorry. In relation to the capital receipts, obviously we have got the moratorium on the farm sales assets at the moment. What would our position have been this time last year in relation to that? Would it been greater than the 2.7 that you're looking at in those sales when we didn't have that on there? Because it's looking at the consequentials of that, because if we're not using our assets to be able to release funds, to be able to do some of the changes that are required, we then have to borrow, and that would be of a much higher cost over the longer term to that. So what is the consequentials, just so that we understand that in a bit more detail?
James.
Report for last year, and we were slightly worse off at this point last year, but there wasn't a huge amount of sales achieved either last year. What we've had to do is there was significant amount of capital receipts being planned to be used to fund this year's capital programme, and we've had to reprofile that forward. Normally we'd wrote it's meant we've had to reprofile less borrowing forward and more capital receipts than we'd like to. Usually the capital receipts would remain in year and we'd use those as borrowing and instead of borrowing and roll forward the borrowing. In this case, we've had to roll forward capital receipts and borrowing, which we've not likely to do because we do not believe we're going to have enough capital receipts in hand at the end of the year to do that. So there is an implication on the borrowing and the MRP.
Can you quantify that? Can you put a figure on that?
Cost terms.
I think about 3 million has been pushed forward, so it's £55,000 per million borrowed. So yes, 150,000 possibly once the full year effect of those schemes are hitting the MRP and borrowing.
Thanks, James. Chris, did you want to add to that at all? Or
no, I mean, I think it's just trying to understand the ramifications of certain decisions. I mean, there are pluses and minuses on both sides of it, but it's trying to get the right balance moving forward. But I just wanted to understand that in a bit more detail, and I thank James for his answer.
Yeah, and there has been an asset review within the council. Well, you know, putting aside the County Farms estate, what potential is there for capital disposals over the next couple of years? And, you know, when you're looking at the capital programme, you're looking at 5-10 years' time. What potential non-County Farm asset disposal is there? Is it significant, or is that £10 million target largely made up of County Farms and not other assets?
Stay without the County Farms. The 10 million target is not achievable, and substantially that target isn't achievable. Whereas the County Farms, you know, with the right sales, they could bring in, you know, £1 million for a reasonable farm or a small holding substantially. Even retaining some of the land to relet. You know, when we're talking about a sale of a office or a building, or, you know, like the Gwalia, whilst that's a substantial building, it comes with lots of liabilities and risks, and certainly doesn't bring in that level of capital receipts. Even a small school, when declared surpluses, you know, we're talking £250,000 or perhaps a little bit more, whereas a farm is you know, could be £1 million. So, and you know, there's not we've disposed of as many of the corporate assets as we can. So it's as and when you know, it was relying substantially on the County Farms to reach that £10 million target.
Yeah, yes, there's real difficulty in selling or moving on some liabilities because they're liabilities. There's as much a reason to move them on as a capital receipt sometimes, isn't it? But what would be an appropriate target for non-County Farms assets, receipts going forward? If you stripped away County Farms, what would be an appropriate target for capital receipts?
It's probably something we'd have to go away and have a look at to see what's in the plan in the asset review, to see what could be released.
Okay. No, it's I think it's important for the wider council to understand what potential there is between those two areas.
Yeah, you know, I think we're probably talking a couple of million a year rather than 10. That's sort of low, but we can get more accurate figures. But you know, it's certainly no more than that, I would have thought.
Okay, thank you, James. I think it'd be useful for the wider council to understand that, really. Councillor Danny.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was going to ask a similar question to yourself about the what else was there apart from the farm estate, but I'll move on to some of this has somewhat been covered as well. It's about the delays in reprofiling, really. What has caused it, and what actions have been taken or are going to be taken to improve delivery performance.
Apologies. Sorry.
James has touched on that a little bit, and
So I said it's been covered somewhat, really.
But added to that, you know, there's a demand from the service for a new facility, but there's also an incentive to delay the expenditure to ease the cash flow of the council. So can you combine that with responding to Danny as well? What's the main drivers?
I think there are lots of reasons why the capital expenditure gets delayed. There are, especially things with the schools, there is an outline plan, and it is an outline plan with estimates and profiling based on very high level estimates and very high level plans that involve a lot of things falling into place before a school can be constructed. You know, we're talking about planning and planning then getting called in by Welsh Government. You've got consultations as well that have to take place depending on the type of school that happens. Contractors becoming available, costs becoming favourable, not having to revisit the designs of sites to cost engineer and get things down. There's a whole ruck of things that have to fall into place for something to start being built, and even then, you know, weather and things like that can impact it as well as to how quickly things get built, and there's a whole myriad of ways. The you know, delaying it because of the to save borrowing is not really taken into account at all. It just happens to be a happy accident really from it, rather than that. You know, we'd ideally build these schools as quickly as possible. I'm talking schools in this case, and, you know, get rid of the old schools, release the capital receipts, rather than pupils being in schools that are not as good as the new ones, you know. And but yeah, it's those delays that are causing it, mostly cost and getting things within cost, rather than actually delaying borrowing for cash flow. That's just a happy accident, I think.
No, that's really good to hear, James. Marianne, I can see you've popped your camera on, and your area is probably one of the biggest spenders of capital.
And there are risks, aren't there, with moving the schools programme forward. What I'd like to say is that we have taken the opportunity this year, and I think we presented to Finance Panel last time. We've taken the opportunity to review the programme, and we've put in a number of improvements to the programme. And we've already contracted with a multidisciplinary company that can provide us with additional support if we need it. So that's an additional thing for us, and they can support us with project management, procurement, and costs as well, cost management. So there are things that we are putting in place as a service, jointly with Strategic Property.
Okay, thank you, Mary. I know. I can't remember if you were in that meeting. Danny was a couple of months ago now, wasn't it? But it was a good presentation there by Marianne and her team. Danny, did you have any other follow-ups on that question?
Yeah, well, not particularly on that question. No, as such.
Oh, no, yeah. Please carry on with your other questions.
Yeah. I was looking at the 9.54 million reprofiled from 2025, 2026. How does this affect the council's ability at all to meet its priorities?
I can't remember which areas those.
Section 5, whatever.
It's the 3 schools, isn't
Is
it?
it mainly schools, James?
Yeah, it was the 3 or 4 schools. So I mentioned, apologies. I still got the last year's report in front of me, so I was trying to work it out. Yeah, it was those 4 or 5 schools. Is it 4 schools there? So, like I said, these were estimates of our costs and in-year spend as things happen. That it doesn't detract from the ability to deliver the schemes. It's just we're getting the budgets in the right year to do it, so as we're not forecasting to borrow more than we need to in too early, if that makes sense. because we need to manage our cash flow, that we have the cash in place ready to do these things. So we'll try and get the budgets in better reflective of when the spend's gonna happen.
Okay. Thanks. Sorry, Danny, did you want to carry on?
That's about me at the moment, I think. Thank you, Chair.
And any other questions from members of the panel? I think, Pete, you were going to look at the risk around these capital programs and potential additional costs when delays are incurred. Is Pete still with us?
Yeah, no, I'm still here. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, Alan, the fingers are a bit slow going over the buttons sometimes, so apologies. Yeah, I guess it was just one off the back of sort of like what Councillor Danny was saying there. It's I guess it's the reprofiling, and then at times, you know, we've still got inflationary pressures with us. We've still got supply chain issues as well. So, and how do we actually address those risks in terms of prioritizing projects?
James.
They're all picked up as part of the business cases as these big schemes pick up and move on. You know, the 5-case business model that we use, and the 3 stages of that pick up those. It also allows us time to reflect and see what we're actually building is still fit for what we need at this point in time as well. So there are opportunities as things move on that, you know, with the changes in pupil numbers and that, you know, we may design a scheme that is or alter the design of the scheme to make it better reflective of the pupil numbers we're seeing at this point in time, rather than when the business case was done 12-18 months ago, the original one. So yeah, there are risks. We try and manage those risks as much as possible. The schemes do factor in some risk and inflationary costs when they're costed, so they take into account that, you know, we take today's prices and then we add in an amount for inflation for when we expect them to be built. So yeah, we take this into account, but there's also a few opportunities as well.
Okay.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I think so, Alex. Thanks.
There's, you know, when you have drawn our attention to that table. What number table was it? Table 1 in there, and the low level of expenditure. We do have quite a bit of expenditure through the I was trying to find it now. It was a regen and grants for projects through the levelling up funding. Are any of those at risk? For example, the one on the Montgomery Canal restoration stuff. There's significant risks in delivering on that, or not? Or is everything going ahead fairly smoothly now? Diane.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. So under the Levelling Up Fund requirements, UK government have now given permission for the projects to roll forward up until March 2028. So there isn't any risk for the funding being taken back in. There are risks to delivery, obviously, but we have complete assurance that we can deliver those in the timeline. One of the reserves has already been delivered. There's another reserve to deliver. One bridge is in progress and delivering at the moment to the revised timescale and cost. And the second bridge has gone out to tender, but with quotes coming in above the original price. So we're looking to how we can change the scaling of that bridge to come in within budget. So those are all ongoing at the moment, but going ahead as planned to the revised timescales.
Thank you. Will additional sources of funding have to be found, because it's quite a risk when projects get delayed, and inflation over the last few years has been quite significant, hasn't it? Are we potentially looking for additional funding, or is it just going to scale back the ambitions of the project?
Yeah, so there was a scale back from 3 reservoirs down to 2, but it was found not only for scale back due to increasing costs of other elements, but also the scale back because the site for the other reserve was found to be not viable and wouldn't meet the requirements, working with the environmental protection group as well.
Oh, okay. So hopefully the actual structure of the canal and the reopening of the canal will be completed within the revised timetable. Thank you, Diane. Who wants to come first, Pete or James? James, did you want to touch on the canal, or shall I bring Pete in first?
Since the Q2 report was written, we have reprofiled some of the Mont Canal budget forward because we hadn't received confirmation at that point in time that we were at the extension to the project timeframe. So some of that has been reprofiled since this point in time, since the report was written.
Oh, okay. Thank you. You'll have to remind us the next quarter that you've answered that question already. So thank you. Councillor Pete.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Sorry, there's just 2 points around that table 1. So 6 months into the year, we have spent 17% of the budget. I guess what assurances are there that we will spend the remaining 83%? And then when I look at paragraph 2.4, we've got 44 million of that expenditure is financed by borrowing. So I guess the question there was around the timing of the borrowing. So have we already borrowed that and we're paying interest costs, or do we not borrow until we need it?
That's one for you, James.
I don't expect we will be spending the full 113 million by the end of the year. I expect more profiling. Well, I've hinted a bit more. There's a bit more with Montgomery. There's a bit more with schools. There's a bit more with HRA that's going to happen over the next couple of months to better realign that. Also, as you've seen with some of these grant awards, we're getting them halfway through the year. So we're building that full budget into the year, and they've only got sort of 6 months to spend it. So that's the case. I'm expecting sort of 80 to 90 million being spent by the end of the year. So we've got another 25, 30 million perhaps to roll forward. And we'll look as much as to delay the borrowing as much as possible. We only borrow when we need cash. So I manage the council's cash flow in such a way that I keep a track of what we're spending. Whilst there is borrowing in the capital programme, depending on what happens with other parts of the council, and this is tied to use of reserves, how the revenue budget is doing as well. We will only borrow at the point in time that we need cash. We don't borrow early unless we think there's going to be a big jump in interest rates. And at the moment, it's quite the opposite. We're trying to delay our borrowing as much as possible and only tie ourselves into short-term borrowing because we're expecting rates to fall. So none of this borrowing is done in front unless we really need the cash at this point in time.
Okay, so sorry, Chair, I think I understood that, James, but just to be clear for myself then, although we're saying there's 44 million will be financed through borrowing, we don't borrow any of that element until we need to.
No,
yeah.
We are what's termed as, I think when Richard Basson comes and does the treasury management ones, we're termed as 100 million. Well, no, we're not quite that far. We're termed as under borrowed as a council. So we haven't actually borrowed the amounts that we needed to fund our capital programme in before. So that's allowed us to save on interest costs, and we'll continue to do that as long as we possibly can.
Yeah.
We constantly hear the internally borrowing, aren't we?
Yes.
Hugely important part of our management of our costs is the treasury management team there. So I know the finance team are really hot on that. So thank you for doing that, because it does save quite considerably on the revenue budget. And any other questions from members? We've covered just talked about the risks and resource management there. So thank you, Pete. I think we've covered most of that now, have we? Yep. And I know one or two officers are having to leave. So I should have thanked them before they left. But thank you to those officers who've contributed this afternoon. Can we, so that's the end of this item, unless there's a comment here. Can we just go to recommendations from these, what recommendations we want to see from the two papers, the revenue and the capital. I know Kath has jotted some down in an email to me. Trying to find them there. So members, what recommendations need to go forward? And I should have touched on, and I miss me, we did ask at the last quarter, the first quarter revenue, about the reserves around schools delegated budget. We wanted a more detail in the reserves table so we can see we got a net position here, but we can't tell whether the net position is worsening because of schools spending their surplus budgets or schools getting into even deeper debt. So we've asked for that before, Mary. It was being produced towards the end of the last financial year, but it's been dropped this year. So I'd like that more comprehensive table that splits between secondary and primary, and that split between those in surplus and those in deficit positions, so we can understand which parts or which schools are building up or impacting on that net position going forward. If you could deliver that next time, Mary.
Yes, we will. We will do that. Apologies that it wasn't done in time for the Q2 report. We'll make sure that it's in there for Q3. Provide the Q2 position.
Brilliant. Shall I work backwards? Look at the recommendations from the capital first report first, then we'll go back to the revenue. Thanks, Kath. You put quite a bit in the chat here. So talk about improving clarity of the capital program reporting, provide clearer commentary on the variance between planned and actual expenditure. Do members want that additional clarity there? And strengthening the monitoring of that slippage and reprofiling of expenditure. Danny?
Councillor Chris has his hand up. Chair.
Oh, sorry.
Just
Chris.
thought, in relation to the capital assets, the implications of a potential change in policy, because it has a significant impact on the amount of funds that could come through based on the discussion that we had, and then the consequences of that if you've got to borrow that money based on, what was it, 55,000 per million. I just think that puts it, you were right to say that the wider membership of the council need to be aware of that, and I think that was a valid point, Chair. So just to flag that one.
Okay, no, thank you, Chris. So yes, it's about that transparency and sources of funding for that capital program. Any other comments flowing from the capital report? No. Shall we go back to the revenue report? Apologies, I'm just scrolling up a bit. We did talk about that transparency in table 1 of the reports, that flow of additional funding through the grant system, whether that can be set out more with a bit more clarity as well. And it'd be, I guess, at what stage does the wider membership of the council get to understand the impact of this additional money as well? Does that go to the individual scrutiny committees? Do they pick up on that? Because there's so many grants coming in. It'd be understanding the impact of those grants, I think, is important.
In the Q2, sorry, Kath.
Oh yeah, please chip in.
The Q2 forecast only comes to finance panel. Obviously, it's in the public domain, but the list of grants probably, as far as I'm aware, doesn't go to individual scrutiny committees. So, but let me check on that. I think, unless Kath can respond.
No, Chair, the grant information doesn't go, as far as well, I've never seen it go to the individual scrutiny committees. Health and Care are now having the Q2 reports go to them, but that will probably falls after this meeting. Is probably going to be the next December meeting.
When I look at the first page, there's £1.3 million going into the adult services to a pathways of care transformation grant. You know, it's a huge sum of money, and you know, what impact is that having? And when that grant is spent, I guess you have to report back to Welsh Government to give assurance around that delivery. And so, you know, when you look through this list, there are significant sums of money. Children's over £1 million there in one, children's 1.8 million in another area. So it significant sums of money being allocated after post-budget in a way. Children's and adults again are £2.7 million. So a comprehensive report, whether that's done at the year end, of the outcomes of all that additional spending. I think it's important that the scrutiny committee fully briefed on that, to whether we're getting value for money, or Welsh Government's getting value for money from those grants they're funding. Any other recommendations from the revenue report? I don't think there's any particular recommendations. I know there's a bit of clarity needed in some areas, and officers have helped us with that. So thank you to the officers for that help. Kath, did you note any recommendations or potential recommendations?
You've noted the one about grants. You've noted about adults and children's services, making sure that there's detailed contingency plans for not yet achieved but assured.
Yeah. Sorry, just looking back to the notes myself.
There was one about possible reduced reliance on risk budget and temporary measures, but
oh yeah, no, Councillor Peat wanted to see that spend on the risk budget at the end of each quarter to see how much is left.
Yep.
And some of the stuff Gareth talked about, it's more year-end stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
About lessons learned.
Do we need to note the other 2 points, Chair, around Councillor Jackie bringing us back some figures on overachieved car parking income?
Yeah.
And I think Mary said she could bring us some reasons around why the column agreed to be achieved becomes not yet achieved or assured.
Yeah. Happy with that, Mary? Diolch yn fawr. And any other particular issues you wish to pick up? No. We'll get the notes out to members, and please come back to me if there's anything else, because cabinet is it's not next week, it's a week afterwards, I think, isn't it? From memory.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll move on now to the last item on the agenda, which is Andrew's item on, I can't find it at the moment, but it's on the council tax base. It's here for information more than anything. Andrew, we've touched on this already to some degree.
Yeah.
Is there anything further I always find this interesting. Nobody else does, but just me. Can you give us a quick synopsis of why it's important when you are building budgets for the council?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so the tax-based report went to Cabinet on Tuesday, the 18th of November. So you're setting the tax base is a statutory annual requirement. And what it does, it determines the number of Band D equivalent properties that we project will pay council tax in the upcoming financial year. So 2026, 2027 in this instance. So we have to look at the number of discounts, exemptions, premiums, disabled band reductions, so any movement in those. Make a number of assumptions. We'll make an assumption around growth in the list, so new builds that we would expect to come online and be rated. And then we make an assumption around the collection rate. This year, within the calculation, it was 98.5%, which is the same as it's been for a number of years. And this is the ultimate collection rate where we aim to get to, as opposed to the in-year collection rate. So there is a difference there. So whilst we're experiencing it's taking longer to collect council tax, certainly around the premiums, we keep going. We don't stop at the end of each financial year. The regulations require that in respect of military properties, so the MOD properties, it's 100% collection. So, and then once we've set the tax base figure, it's an integral part of the budget setting process, because it determines the Band D charge. So you divide the revenue required divided by the tax base, and that would give the Band D charge. And then using the statutory ratios, that would determine the council tax charge from Band A through to Band I. The tax base figure is also used by the Police and Crime Commissioner. So when they're setting their budget, it's used by the town and community councils, again, when they're setting their precept to calculate what their Band D charge is. And also Welsh Government use the tax base figure as part of the revenue support grant figure. So within the report, section 4.2 confirms that the figure, I've just clicked on the wrong button, the figure was 65,692.50. So that's a growth of some 920.84 over last year's council tax base. And primarily the growth has been due to the new builds that have come on board over the past 12 months. And we've seen a number of developments which boosts the tax base. But also make an assumption of the expected new builds that will come on board. And I think we touched upon earlier around the sort of self-catering properties that have transferred from business rates into council tax. They've had an impact on the tax base, even though we've been prudent on the number that we've added into the tax base because of the risk that they may flip back into business rates at some point over the next 6-12 months. And the recommendation moved was to adopt the 65,692.50 figure for the whole of the tax base, and then it's split down in part 4.2 for each of the town and community councils. And that figure is shared yesterday with the clerks of each town and community council.
it was probably a couple of days ago, I think. And there was I saw it on Tuesday, I think. But
yes, actually, yeah, actually, it may have, yeah, I think it did go out Tuesday afternoon, actually. So yeah, it was hot off the press.
Thank you, and sorry, I interrupted you there. Did you have more to say on that?
No, Chair, that was pretty much. If that's enough detail, then
no,
not tour of the tax base.
No, thank you very much. This the tax base is just almost 65,692.5 of a Band D equivalents. How does that impact on the RSG that the Welsh Government, because it feeds into their funding formula somehow? Is it better to have a bigger number or a smaller number?
Potentially, the bigger the tax base figure, the lower the RSG. But what it does do, it gives the local authority the tax raising power through council tax. That said, so that local authorities in Wales aren't penalised by charging premiums, the tax base that the Welsh Government use set in the RSG doesn't take account of premiums. So I think 4.4, it's mentioned that the growth in the tax base solely due to premiums is just over 2,000.5 Band D properties. So the tax base that goes to Welsh Government is excludes those 2,000 properties.
Thank you. In Powys, compared to some other local authorities, we have our average band is higher than many other local authorities. Is that a negative impact on the RSG? That
so it'll boost. So Band E, F, and G, or more so E and F. It adds more than one property per property because of the rating. So the standard charge is on a Band D, then it's a higher ratio for a Band E and a Band F properties proportion. So it's 11/9 and 13/9, and it increases. So it increases our tax base, yes, which can have that negative impact on the RSG.
There has been quite a bit of talk about transforming local taxation, but they always find it too difficult in the end, and it ends up with a revaluation or something, doesn't it? But is Powys in much discussion with Welsh Government about changing the system of council tax or whatever they want to call it in the future?
Yeah, well, as it stands, there will be a council tax revaluation in April 28. So for the whole of Wales, and the proposal within that is that the ratios will change. So I mentioned, Band D is a 9/9, so it's a 1. Band A, the lower end, is 6/9, and it's likely that may go to 5/9 or 4/9, introducing a lower band than a Band A. Whereas the higher bands, Band I goes up to 21/9, could end up at 28/9. So the larger the property and the higher the council tax band, the greater proportion over the Band D properties may pay if the revaluation and the ratios remain the same.
I did see some figures ages ago, and it sort of indicated that Powys and 2 or 3 other local authorities would lose out on this revaluation, and the balance, the shift of resources would go into those areas with the lower average banding on their properties. Have you done any work on the potential impact on funding for Powys on that?
Some initial modelling was done based on the proposals that were being put on the table. I don't have them to hand, but it's something that could be shared for sure.
It would be good because 28 is not that far away, is it? No. April 2028 is not that far away, and when you're looking at the FRM for future years, maybe it's something that would be good for us to see a bit of modelling coming back to finance panel to potentially understand Powys sort of self-funds itself to just over 30% at the moment. And that is likely to increase, from what I understand. That percentage of self-funding will increase and possibly make it even more difficult to on the households within Powys to because it's not significantly higher, but council tax charge is higher than the average in Powys. So it'd be good to understand some modelling and possible scenarios going forward on that. Perhaps that's a note to you, Kath, just to remind me about having a paper on that at some point in the future.
Okay, Chair.
I'm sorry, members, any other comments from members? No, it's only the 5 of us here now, so thank you for holding on, keeping us scored. And no questions to Andrew? No, brilliant. Thank you, Andrew. If the council tax all goes wrong, it's down to you, because you're putting the foundation in there. No pressure. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you so much. Brilliant. That's the end of the meeting. Thanks everyone for joining us. Special thanks to you, Nina, and Diane, as the only directors here. So thank you so much. And thanks to the members for your questions as well. And thanks to Kath. Brilliant. Diolch yn fawr iawn pawb. If you want to hang on for 2 minutes after Kath, Councillor Roberts, apologies. Thank you for holding on as well. Thank you all. Diolch yn fawr iawn. If you want to hold on for a couple of minutes, members,